Hey, in this episode of Franchise Secrets, I have Brigham Dallas on. He's the founder of Hello Sugar, and we jumped right into, the story, which is an amazing story, and then the things that make Hello Sugar different than other brands in its category and make it different than other franchisors. So I think you will start to understand why we at Front Street were so excited to start working with this brand, from the support system to the AI, the technology, the marketing, the go-to-market strategy. So many things that I think franchisees, franchise buyers, and emerging franchisors will learn about key points of differentiation.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
Brigham, welcome, man.
Hey, Erik, thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah.
It's been something I've been wanting to do for a while now.
Dude, I wanted to have you on for a while. And last time I saw you, I think you and I were walking off as champions on the pickleball court together. At least that's what I remember. Or maybe that's when you beat me. You had a rookie on your team and you smoked me. I can't remember. One of those two things happened.
It was early morning. 5 a.m. is definitely way too early for me to get up to play pickleball, but we had a good time. No matter what happened, it was a fun one.
Oh, well, let's jump into it. You're the founder of Hello Sugar, and that thing's blowing up. And we've known each other for over a year now. And and finally, Hello Sugar and Front Street Equity Partners are working together. And so, full disclosure, I have interest in this brand, Front Street does, and so we wanted to kind of talk about what makes you different, because I see so many franchisors out there, and when we at Front Street have conversations with brands that we want to possibly get involved with, we ask them, what makes you different? Why your brand? And probably the most common thing that we hear is, our territories are bigger. We give more people to our franchisees. We do this, that, and the other. And that's the wrong answer. Or we don't charge very much for franchise fees. So all these kind of answers, that's what they think is different. And you have things that truly make you different. I did a post in the Facebook group and different social media channels, and people are just like, wow, these are things that make Hello Sugar different. And they don't even know it's Hello Sugar, but they know the thing. So let's talk about those things. But before we do that, give a bit of your history, your background, and then let's dive into those differentiators.
Sure thing. So starting off, Hello Sugar. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. From the time I was 7 years old, selling golf balls, an eBay business in high school. When I was in college, I had this distinct thought, I want a business more than a girlfriend. If I had to choose between the two, I want a business. And my first business in college, how desperate I was. It rained one day and this worm crawls across the ground. And I look at the worm and I'm like, maybe. And then I dropped out of school that summer. I went 9 to 5 to the library and started wholesalefishingworms.com and became the largest provider of fishing worms across the country. So this is in my blood. I love this
live worms.
Live worms. Yeah. That was my first company out of college. And that spawned a huge interest in entrepreneurship. I traveled a ton. I started an online advertising agency. I ran that for 10 years. We did multi-million-dollar of accounts every year. And when I was 26 years old, I was running scammy diet pills. The things didn't work. I hated it. I couldn't sleep at night. And I just knew I had to get out of this business. And so one of my friends in Utah was like, man, I had to pay $20,000 in taxes. And I'm like, whoa, how much money did you make? And she goes, oh, I made $100,000 last year. And I'm like, wow, you cut hair? And she's like, no, I don't cut hair, I wax. I'm like, well, what is that? I had no idea, Erik. It was such a foreign thing to a guy that has never done anything like that in his life. And she said, yeah, I wax. I do Brazilian waxing, which is, well, let's just say, just Google it, but keep your safe search on, basically, if you wonder what that is. But yeah, so we did. So she said, I do Brazilian waxing. And I'm like, well, tell me about that. She goes, well, I do for an hour at $45 a piece. I'm like, wait, 45.90? You make $180 an hour? I'm like, well, how much is your cost? And she goes, oh, it's just wax. And it's like $2 a service. And I'm like, what? Like, you make more than a lawyer. Like, how much schooling did you have? And she's like, oh, just 6 months. And I'm like, this is awesome. I was like, well, how'd you find your client? She goes, Groupon. And my head starts spinning, Erik. I'm just thinking like, she found these on Groupon. Like, I do all this advertising. I'm really good at that. I could build a business off of something similar. And then I was like, well, okay, well, how much, like, how do you get clients to come back? And she just said, well, they come back every month because hair grows back every month. And so 30,000 foot view, I started thinking about this and it's like, okay, clients come back every month, repeat business, low cost of goods, $2 a wax, low barrier to entry to get into this profession, but still something, right? So we're looking for people that are career oriented. Estheticians like want to work in skin versus just getting a job at Subway where like the turning revolving door. And I can run advertising to it to make this work. So I was like, okay, I'm in. I flew her down to Arizona. I spent $3,000 training her. I found a room in the back of a plastic surgeon's office, Salon suite model, Erik. And we just went to town. That first year we did 70K in revenue. The next year, 360, the next year, 950, the next year, 1.5 million. And every year I just took everything I made and kept putting it back in. And then enter pandemic. So 2020. I had a good business. I was teaching how to start a successful business at a college, at a university. I was teaching a class in Utah at BYU. And I just loved it. I found my calling. It's like helping people start businesses. And so then I heard about franchising and I'm like, I got a good business. I like helping people start businesses. Maybe I can create a franchise and marry the two together. And that was so exciting for me. We launched in 2021, January. And today, which is 3.5 years later, we have 82 open locations and we're set to open about 110 to 120 total for the year of 2024.
That is a big number. I did this teaser post about all the kind of the attributes of Hello Sugar, and somebody said, that sounds amazing. Sounds too good to be true. They probably have one corporate location that's been open up for 100 years and is making really good money, and they probably have 0 franchisees. And I'm like, no, they have, obviously over 80 locations open with a lot in the pipeline to open up. So how many of these have been open up for over 12 months?
Oh, gosh.
I know that's a tough question, but I mean, do you have an estimate?
Yeah. So let me give you kind of like a growth schedule. So that first year in 2021, I only opened it up to friends and family. And I heard somebody say like, look, if your first ones don't have financial performance, you're dead in the water, right? And so I basically had my closest friends and people I was really trusting do franchises. And I effectively ran it in their business as well. Like I was very, very active in running their businesses as well as them to make sure we were profitable at year one. So small number. Then the next year we did double the number there. And then last year we did double as much as the year before. So I have to say probably 30, like we'll say like half, maybe 35-ish are open for more than 30-ish are open for more than a year.
Yeah. And I think that's a strong number because that's the other thing. People are like, well, all of them have been open up, for 6 months or less. So just want to kind of set the stage as we talk about this emerging brand. There's a lot of locations that are open and quite a few that have been open up for 12 months or more. In other words, there are franchisees to validate with. And because a lot of emerging brands, I've said it over and over in the podcast, validation is very light in a lot of emerging brands. And I remember coming back from the pickleball court with you. We don't have to get into all of it, but you're like, how many, what's good validation in a brand? Like good validators, franchisees that are big fans of the brand and would do it again, high net promoter score, in other words. And you said, do you think 70% would be good? I'm like, yeah, it's probably a pretty strong number, 70% franchisees that are big fans of the franchisor. And you're like, oh, wow, you will crush that. And we just had this incredible conversation that really blew me away about validation. So I think if anybody out there is, as a buyer, is wanting strong validation, you're going to love Hello Sugar. And franchisors, I think this is something for you to strive towards as you listen to this podcast. Listen to what we talk about, because I've never seeing validation, like as the amount or percentage of franchisees that love this brand as high as Hello Sugar. So as you listen to the podcast, just keep that in mind. Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. All right, let's talk about some of the things that make you different. Where do you want to start?
Yeah.
What's one of your top?
Let me start with a 30,000 foot view, Erik.
I'd like to
I had
go
a conversation.
40,000. I mean, 30,000 is okay, but I mean, if you're looking at 40,000 view, that might even be better.
30,000 is commercial, privates when we get to 40,000.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying. I'd like 40, but if you want to do 30, that's fine. You run the show here.
Hey, I aim to please, Erik. Let's go 40,000 foot. All right. So it was year one, and I was talking to franchisees that were coming in. It was a discovery day. We don't know what we're doing. Let's just put this together. Year one, I have no clue what franchising is about. And I sat down with one, and he was a very outspoken franchisee. Loved the guy to death, but he has opinions. Let's just say that. And I was like, look, you need to teach your people how to do sales because sales is so important. And like, unless you have membership conversion, like you're not going to do well. And you got to teach them sales. And Brigham, he says to me, Brigham, I don't know how to do that. You teach them sales. I'm like, crap, and it got me thinking as a franchisor, fundamentally as a franchisor, we have economies of scale. We have lots of locations, so we can drive down the cost for the franchisees. That's really important. But the other thing we can do is we can solve problems for them. And so I looked at a business like Hello Sugar and I said, okay, what are the pillars that make Hello Sugar successful? And I wrote all of them down. And I thought to myself strategically, how do I solve each of these pillars for the franchisees? And that was the thing that makes us different, is that this business, which normally would take a lot of time to run, we figured out how to automate at least the hard parts to make this business much more likely to be successful. And that's why we have such high validation. It's because the franchisees see how much they're getting from the franchise. I heard this early on in franchising. I heard, if you get into business, franchisees love you year one. And by year 5, they're like, I know how to do this. I don't want to be paying them a royalty. Erik, you own Salon Suites. It's like, yeah, like year 1, they give you a lot of help, but like year 5 and 10, like you don't need them per se. You might need their brand name, but you know what you're doing, right? And I cared so much about franchisees. I never want to have that relationship where like they're paying a franchise fee and not getting something out of it. And so this was top of mind in all of the execution of strategy for the things that we do differently.
So you were thinking as you're creating this, like, what would you want if someone was to create something for you where it's just so valuable, the thing that they give you, it saves you time, it saves you money, it increases conversion, like everything's good about it. It's hard for you as a franchisee. Like, what would that be that a franchisor could do for the franchisee? Which, franchisees out there probably like, I wish my franchisor was doing more of that. But it's not an easy lift for a franchisor to do that, no, especially early on. So what made you have that desire to do that?
I care. I really care about the success of franchisees. And that's what it comes down to. I want to solve problems. I want them to be successful. I take it personally. Like year 1, when we started, the first 2 franchisees we had, I opened a business with them at the same time in 3 different markets. So they had one in each of the 2 markets and I had one. And theirs weren't as successful. And it drove me crazy. I was making very, very good money in my own salons. And I'm like, I have no financial worries at all, but I have like severe anxiety seeing one of my franchisees not be successful. So what drove me on this is I want to make sure that our team, if they believe and trust in me, they better be able to eat. Like my team eats. That's something I always say. It's very important to me. So yeah, it started with that. It just started with making sure that everyone was taken care of.
So let's dive into it. What are some of the things
Yeah.
that you ended up doing for franchisees or doing the heavy lifting for at the corporate office?
Yeah, I mean, let's get into what makes a Hello Sugar salon successful, right? Like, think about this. You're doing Brazilian waxing. It's a service. If you don't understand Brazilian, think hair. So you need people to come in the door, right? And that's hard for people. How do we get people in the door? So we went out and we solved that. We had my old marketing agency. I took everything I knew. One of my former students, who was like top in the class, runs the entire company now, and he does things exactly how I want for the marketing side. We're able, Erik, to get leads at $3 a lead. By the time they open their doors, their books are full or close to full in markets. Like it's unheard of seeing this with very little cost. Most people are paying 5 times as much as we're paying to drive the results that we're driving because we're so good at it. So at the top level, it's leads, getting them in the door. At the middle level, it's how do we convert those leads to members? And so we built, and again, back to my sales training, I'm really good at the marketing side. I built an entire course on how to sell memberships. I go through every single detail. I do role plays with the estheticians. I've got a full online course because I used to be a professor at a university. I know how to teach. So I was able to build this course. I hired the best in the whole company, and we've created a sales training program that franchisees can use to teach their people how to sell memberships. And I'm very proud of this, Erik. Our membership conversion rate is over 40%. In Arizona, I'm at 47%. Nationwide, it's 42%. Almost 1 in 2 people that walk in the door buy a membership.
So let's talk about in-store experience. So when they walk in the door, are they like, what happens when they first walk in the door? Because like who sells them? Like, is it the receptionist that's selling right away? Is it like, one of 2 that walk in the door? Like, talk more about that.
Yeah. Again, back to the PJ level, 40,000 feet. Year 1, 2015, I went online and I was like, I need to make a brand for Hello Sugar. And so I put 4 different ads up. I had one that was a high fashion, one that was like a girl on the beach, one that was a girl hanging out with friends, and one, and I'm just going to say the term because this is what it's called. I mean, no disrespect to anybody in this field. It was a curvy girl who was wearing, this is what she calls it on the video, a fat bikini. It's a bikini for larger women. Okay. No disrespect, men, on this. That's just what it's called. Okay. So she had this bathing suit on. It was like a bikini for larger women. And I put that ad up. So I had 4 ads on this Facebook post, different ones, and I measured engagement. I spent $100 on this. It's probably a multi-$1,000 study for like a big organization. And I learned that I got 3 times the engagement of the larger curvy woman. And then I did a word cloud where I took customer sentiment of all the reviews across all the locations out there. I wasn't started yet. This is brand new. And I learned that the number 1 word in this business is she makes me feel comfortable. And so I started putting 2 and 2 together. I said, how do I help people feel comfortable? And maybe people don't need high fashion, because they don't look like that, right? Like I thought, I'm a guy. I'm like, okay, salons, I got to have beautiful, perfect tents. Like that's the opposite you want in a salon business, right? You want somebody, when they look at you and you're naked on a table, that you feel comfortable walking into that place. That was what resonated with clients. And so everything about that experience was custom fabricated. So when you go on the website, you see models of all different sizes, all different colors, all different shapes. We have gay people on there, straight people. We have Black, white, Asian, like everything you could possibly think of. I want people to know anybody is welcome in here. When you walk into the salon, you'll see these beautiful photos of like artistically designed people. Every door has body positivity images. So they'll say like, you look amazing, smile, you're beautiful, like things like these on the door to help people feel that nudge of sentiment of confidence and comfortability. When I hire estheticians, I do a profile test to find out the estheticians that make you feel comfortable. I have personality characteristics I look for in estheticians for these specific things. And so every single facet of that leads them to feeling comfortable by the time they walk in the door. And we can do these in large flagships. We can do these in suites. Now, getting to your question, Erik, getting back to your question, how do they sell memberships? Well, 1, they feel it, right? But when they walk in the door, they are not greeted by a reception team. And some facts on this, Erik. The average tenure of a receptionist is 3 months. We know this from the salon industry. It's 3 months long. They're paid minimum wage. They don't care about the job. They're there, probably going to college, and this is a part-time gig. So hours are really hard to work with. And you got to pay that team to act motivated, and they never are. It's a whole nother business inside of a business. And I said to myself, I hate walking into a business and having to talk to somebody if I'm the only client in the door, right? Like, I just want to be on my phone. I'm like, Gen Z millennials, like that's not our thing, right? And I just don't like reception. I'm just like, okay, like, what do they actually do? They book appointments, they check people out, they help welcome people that come in the door. I can do all of that with other people. So I eliminated reception from our salons. We do everything online. We spent $250,000 last year on AI technology, and I can go into this another time, but
I'd like to dive into some of that because I've seen the technology. Before we were even working together, you educated me more on AI in the reception, like what you're doing with these.
Yes.
I have another friend that's doing that, but he's not a franchisor. He's working on a solution like that. But I'm like, wow, nobody's doing this. I even put feelers out there to see who else is doing something like this in franchising. I don't know anybody. I'm probably going to hear about some people, but I don't know anybody right now that is utilizing AI reception like you are and your team is at Hello Sugar. Like, nobody in franchising is doing what you're doing. Tell me more.
Yeah. Our AI is best in class. We hired somebody internal. We spent $150,000 on like the tech side of things last year, plus like the person's wages internally to like build this out. And it was actually featured the World Dev Conference for AI, which has like world business leaders and world leaders in AI. They featured Hello Sugar, and they were like, I want that at our place. That's how good this was. It is mind-blowingly good, and it is cutting edge just on the top of everything. We have a 64% automation rate today, which means that you can ask any question you want. And 64% of all questions that come in the door, I want to book an appointment. I need to reschedule. I'm running late to an appointment. I'm like, I have these questions about how to do a Brazilian wild, like all of these things. It answers all of it. Like, it's crazy how good this is. Instantaneous responses, instantaneous bookings. Hey, do you have anything at 3 p.m.? Let me check for you. Find the appointment, look at the calendar, see what's available. No, I don't have a 3 p.m., but I got a 5 p.m. Would that work for you? It's pretty close on time. That kind of stuff, like that level of AI is like awesome. And what that does for our franchisees, I was paying $6,000 a month for reception in a location. And what would happen is the esthetician would come to the front with a client that they feel they know, like, and trust. They're comfortable with that person, pass it off to somebody who doesn't care about the business. And then we would lose the sale. We'd lose the rebook. It was detrimental to the company. I eliminated that $6,000. So I got $6,000 more profit per location. and on top of that, the estheticians are the ones checking them out, selling the membership. And it's a lot harder to tell an esthetician, no, I don't want a membership after you've been naked on the table and she's like really cared for you, than it is a receptionist that you don't even know.
This is one of the things that I loved about Hello Sugar. I love that you put the time, the effort, the energy in, the money to develop that. And franchisors, if like this is how like this is the future of franchising right here. Like what you just heard Brigham say is something that every franchisor should be thinking about. One, from just having solutions like this, but getting used to AI and using AI to help your franchisees. Like there's no, like, here's the thing. If you see Brigham at, any of these industry conferences, you've got to come up to him, franchisors out there, and ask him what he's doing. Like he should be on the stages speaking about AI and all these franchising conference. He's just under the radar actually doing it. So when I think about differentiation for franchisors, this is one of the big ones. Thinking of a solution like this to help franchisees save money and make more money and not have to deal with all the headaches. Like this is why I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Where do you see this going? Do you see this as is just learning, just getting better and better? Is it like, where do you see the Hello Sugar's AI receptionist going?
Yeah. I mean, best in class on e-commerce side is 70%. We're pretty darn close on that side. So it's at 64% now. I think we could top e-commerce. E-commerce is far easier than any kind of service industry. So my goal is to stay ahead of the curve and stay at like 70, 75%. That's one side. The second side is to be able to predict needs of the clients. So, hey, it's been 30 days. Why don't we send them a nudge? But let's like actually look at their last appointment. Hey, it's been 4 weeks since you've seen Susie. I noticed that you typically get Brazilians and you're due for both a Brazilian and a brow wax. Would you like me to help you book that? Like something to that level of predictive analysis. I think we could get into that space next on the AI side.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's talk about, something else that makes you different, specifically makes you different than other, people that are in the sugaring space or the waxing space.
Yeah. You want to segue from that?
That was my cue for you to get into those 3 services. Let me help you, man. This is not getting edited out, by the way. This is absolutely staying in. Brigham, have you ever thought about laser? I've heard like there.
Oh, it's just funny you should ask.
Sugaring, but
who would have thought of this?
Does anybody do all 3?
No, they don't, Erik. It's funny you should ask. Let me just start off by saying there are people that will always wax and it's best for them. There are people that will always sugar and they will never wax and sugaring is best for them. And there are people that will laser and laser is best for them. And I could get into the specifics about which one's good for each. But just suffice it to say that there's markets that are independent of each other in the hair removal space. And I want to be able to capture all 3 markets. I don't want to be seen as a Brazilian salon that's doing wax or a Brazilian sugar salon. I want to be seen as a hair removal salon. And so this year we made the jump into laser. Laser is incredibly complex as a business model. It's usually done in med spas. And med spas, I went out and I stepped down from CEO for a month and a half and I focused on only doing laser. And I have an obsessive personality, Erik. So my wife hates this, but it's one of those things where I start with something and I sleep and I dream about it. And this is what it was with laser. And so I went to every competitor in Phoenix. I talked to everybody who was doing laser. I walked in their salons and I pretended to book appointments. I asked their customer service. I got their pricing. I researched every laser on the market. I know everything about every laser that exists. I know everything about light waves. I hired one of the 6 PhD specialists, I guess, in the country on laser. He's like the national board of directors. He's now on my board of directors. I've hired this guy personally to be like my consigliere when it comes to laser. And we entered the laser space a month ago. And I can tell you it is beyond cool what it's done for us. I did some research on this. So 10% of our clients are leaving to try laser. This is prior to us starting laser. And in Phoenix, I have 1,750 members a month that join the company. And if I had 10% of those, 175 that started a laser membership that month, my profits would be around $250,000 more per month.
And we like profits. So
we like money.
And I like the fact, like, why did you not look at laser sooner? Because I think a lot of franchisors should be thinking, what other revenue streams could I bring in without changing the model too much? And then you don't want to be, have just all kinds of random different services as a franchisor. So you have to focus. But, like, what do you wish you would have done it sooner? And yeah, just give me some of the a little bit more of the background or the mindset around adding an additional revenue stream.
When I was in college, I frequented this hot dog shop called J Dog's. It was a local shop in the area and it won best hot dog in Utah. And they had one product. It was the J Dog hot dog. That's it. They had different toppings, but that's all they sold. And it always had an effect on me. It's like, if they started selling burgers, I wouldn't like this place as much. That's what I kept thinking in my head. I'm like, this is my hot dog place. Like, you start selling salad, I'm going to be pissed off, right? And I think that always stuck with me. And I think now it's this thought of, man, like, it's too different. It's too much of a different segment. But the more I started thinking about it and looking at it, it just makes sense. It just makes sense to be a hair removal shop. Now, it is enormously difficult to pull this off. I cannot stress that enough. Every state has its own regulation. What's that?
It's enormously difficult for the franchisee or the franchisor to pull off, or both.
For the franchisor,
for the franchisor?
The franchisee less once we get this figured out.
Yep.
We have everything in place now. Like,
Yeah.
so we found a funding partner. We have the board of director guy that's like laser king,
The laser
and
king.
we have a medical director that is national. So you need a medical director in like every state. And so they can just come to us and be like, oh, I want to sign on. And he charges X amount of dollars per month and they're ready to go. So for the franchisees to onboard, it's not that difficult. But from a franchisor perspective, we had to figure out insurance, liability. We had to figure out a laser. We have to figure out how to train and certify our staff. What about pay? How do you pay staff when they have 3 different services and models? The traditional hourly wage doesn't really work for our business because we're a commission business. So there's a lot to think about to get this like off the ground and executed. But we've started, and I mean, I can tell you this, my first month doing laser, we made profit in one location.
So that's awesome. I mean, that's very strong. So there's a reason why franchisors aren't, if they have one product that's easy or 2 products that's easy, and a third one's going to add complexity to the franchisor and other sets of challenges, like you mentioned. There's reasons why franchisors won't do that. But I love it. You're not going to, you're probably going to, not have a million different products or services like this. But I think on highly profitable ones like this, more franchisors should be looking like, how can I add another product or service to my existing customer, my customer that's already there? Or what am I, a good question for franchisors to ask, or franchisees to tell your franchisors, like, we are losing customers and we're losing them to this other thing. For you, it was laser. And there's a solution to that, to be a provider of that. And it's obviously profitable. So any more comments around laser, those 3 products, before we move on?
Yeah, not a comment on that, but a comment for franchisors. You're touching on something really important here. It's market dominance of a category, right? So we were in the Brazilian waxing category, but then I just started thinking, oh, wait, we could be in the hair removal category. And how do we dominate the category of hair removal? The second thing, from a franchisor perspective, it's revenue capture of franchisees. I say this number a lot, but it's like, how much of the $100 that comes into the franchisee, how much revenue capture happens at the franchisor level? And really, we want that to be as high as possible, not just for franchisors, but for franchisees. Because my thing is, I do not ask for anything from a franchisee unless it's making them more money to do it with us than to do it elsewhere, right? So if you buy wax on Amazon and you buy our wax, it's going to be more expensive than if you bought it straight from us. So we can charge for that. And we have economies of scale, so we can lower the cost for the franchisees and make a little money for the franchisor on the side as well. And so franchisors should be thinking, how do we have a higher revenue capture percentage? Where are areas for that, where we can still add value for the franchisee?
Let's talk about a little bit more about that customer acquisition strategy and the marketing.
Yes.
Like, you're doing marketing for them. They're paying you for it, right? And
Yeah.
and talk about, like, a lot of marketing companies are going to charge, $400, $500, $600 a month to manage Facebook ads. You are doing a lot of the Facebook ad management for franchisees. And what does that look like? How do you charge? I know you charge differently. I know you're doing things so differently. And I know the franchisees absolutely love the model of Facebook ads and Facebook marketing that you're doing. So share that, so franchise, buyers and franchisors can start to understand, the brilliance of it.
I have an inherent disdain, hate, loathing for a 2% brand fund. This is standard in the franchise industry, a 2% brand fund. And what that means, guys, is like, if you're paying a royalty of 6%, typically franchisors will charge 2% on top of that for what's called a brand fund. And that brand fund is meant to do marketing for you. And they can use it at their discretion in any way possible. And there's not a lot of governance over that 2%. So they could use it for your location to do a national TV ad, which is not going to do anything for you. Or they could also use it to find new franchisees. I mean, we've seen all kinds of gambits on this fund. And I hate that. I absolutely think it's very inefficient, and I never want to do that. So what we did instead was, you know what? We're going to perform or you don't pay us, period. And so we manage the ads. You decide how much you want to spend. And then it's $7.50 per completed appointment that comes in your door. And franchisees can think, hey, I would absolutely pay X amount of dollars knowing that I'm going to get this much in return. And we can actually track it out. We actually know per location, for every dollar we spend on advertising, what that returns in revenue for us as a company. And we can say, okay, if you're under this amount, you're break even, and this amount, you're profitable. So continue spending money, reduce the spends. We do reports that tell every single channel and how much you're spending on there and what they're getting out of that per channel. And we have a strategic conversation every month with our franchisees saying, this is what you're getting, and do you want to spend more or less? And really what that did when we switched to this model is it's extremely easy to throw an ad on Facebook. Okay. Anyone can do that. But to throw an ad on Facebook and then target them in multiple different ways with multiple different ads and optimization on that side, then go through the texting process to get them to book an appointment, an email process to get an appointment, and then get them to complete the appointment and become a member, and managing that whole cycle all the way through and finding the members and using them as the audience to target people on Facebook so we can find people like the members and not just the ones that create leads. That whole process has 10 to 15 steps. And if my company is focused on just lead generation and not completed appointments, we miss the boat, we miss the mark, and it's too expensive for the franchisees. So we focus on the right thing, which is in the funnel, and we don't do a brand fund, which creates inefficiencies, and the franchisees are extremely happy with us.
Now, this is for the management of it. That fee per booked appointment is not the ad spend itself, correct?
Yeah, they decide what they want to spend on ads. So they might come back and say, hey, this month I got $1,500 budget. How do you see that we use this? And we're looking at them. We'll look at all the data across all different channels, social, Google, YouTube, video, like everything. And we'll say, okay, I recommend you do X, Y, and Z. And here's the data to support that.
Yep. And then so I think that's brilliant. We should probably do a podcast just on that at some point. Franchisees love that. Like, I mean, I would imagine franchisees have to absolutely love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, right? But we've figured it out. I mean, I spend millions and millions of dollars a year on advertising. And so I literally taught a class in college about how to do advertising. This is my forte. I've written books of stuff on this, written books of stuff on this. So I would love to talk about Google, Facebook, everything on there.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have to do that again. I love it when franchisors, founders like you have a marketing mind. And it's just because we talked to some of our franchisors that we talked to, we're thinking about work rhythm. We're like, what's your customer acquisition strategy? They're like, it's amazing. You're not going to believe it. Our customer acquisition strategy is referrals. We're like, that's not duplicatable. Like, you can't just, put more money to this or scale it this way. So I love it when there's a paid ad strategy to acquire customers. I mean, we all love referrals, and they're cheap, but that is not something where you can just, put another quarter and into the machine and it cranks out a customer. So, all right, we're winding down. You have a strategy of going into salon suites. One of our brands at Front Street Equity is Go Glow, and it's spray tanning, and that has a similar strategy. Let's say you are much further along. You've been in many more salon suites than they have, but it's a similar strategy, and I love that. And I think that's brilliant for these retail-based franchisors to be able to have a product or a location like a salon suite to go into for a lot of different reasons. So explain your strategy of salon suites and why is it advantageous? Why do franchisees like that?
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at a market together. Okay, so let's imagine we're going into Kansas City and we decide, we're a multi-unit owner. We want to build a couple locations. So I purchase as a franchisee a 3-pack. Okay. And the plan is to do one the first year, one the second year, one the third year. And then in 3 years, I'd have 3 flagships opened. And, they would start to grow. And probably in 5 years' time, I would have a pretty good business. I mean, that's a typical franchise route. Well, with our route, year 1, you could open 2 suites. It takes 2 months to open. We're going to fill the books right away. We're going to season the staff, right? Because if you're hiring for a flagship, you need probably 10 staff. You're going to run through 50 applicants to get 10. Probably 5 of those are going to suck, if we're being honest, right? But if you're hiring just 2 or 3 people out of the 50, so you're going to get the best, right? And so you're going to start to build your brand. So your flagship, from the day you decide to do a flagship till the day, and a flagship, guys, are like a 1,200 square foot anchored on a retail store, like a grocery store, right? And suite is inside of a salon suite building. So the day you decide to do a flagship to the day you open is going to be about a year. It just always is. You're like, how is that possible? It takes 3 months to build. But yeah, there's like permits and lease negotiation and finding a spot. It takes a while, right? So the day you decide to be a franchise owner until the day you open is about a year. In that time period, let's say Kansas City. If this were me going into Kansas City, I would pick the best area possible that I'm like, I know this area is a home run. Let's do a flagship here. Put a flagship down in that spot. At the same time, I'd pick my 2 secondary markets and I'd open suites in those areas. And I'd let them gestate. I'd let them grow and incubate. And then in a year from now, I'm already profitable in those locations. They're making me money. So by the time I open my flagship and I'm paying rents and I've got all these expenses to the flagship, the suites are supplementing the losses of the flagship until it's profitable. So I've got these incubators in place to reduce the risk. And then those suites, we can look at the 2 and be like, oh, this one's making more money than the other one. I have concrete data and I'm going to go open a flagship in that one. And then the 3rd year, I've let the other one season a little longer. I open a flagship in that one. And so this like piecemeal strategy allows us to get high brand exposure, right? Because we got 3 different markets. It allows us to grow with minimal losses during the startup phase. And it allows us to use real data to know if a location will be effective or not to open. And finally, the 4th point, which I love, is it seasons your staff. It allows you to create really strong staff in a market before having to go ham all into a market and grow it with like those 10 people that are not that good, right? And then it ruins your brand from the beginning. So all these things are really effective in growing the market fast and effectively and with the least amount of cost possible.
Well, I'm a huge fan of it. And, I think more franchisors should be thinking like, how can we, have a ramp up like that for franchisees or be able to seed markets and even with staff, like you mentioned. So, all right. I don't have anything else. Anything else that you would like to share before I let you go? I do want to share one thing. If you're interested in Hello Sugar, go to hellosugarfranchise.com. And we'll help you go through that whole process over at Front Street. But anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
Yeah, you can find us actually.
You can talk about Hello Sugar. You can talk about whatever you want, man. The floor is yours.
So much pressure. First off, if you want to find us, either Google it, franchise Hello Sugar, or just go to franchise.hellosugar.salon. It's not .com at the end. That's going to trip people up. Franchise.hellosugar.salon.
Let me tell you something right now. Before you get to your last point, I was talking to your team while we were doing the podcast. They do own the domain Hello Sugar franchise, and they are doing a redirect. So while we were on this podcast, I confirmed that. So we're good to go.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Holy crap. What a partner you are, Erik. What a partner. My last thing, I'll just say this. We partnered with Front Street, and I'll just say why. I'll do a shout out for Erik. It was scary going with a franchise sales organization like Erik's because, candidly, they're expensive. And it was somebody else coming into the brand, and I was scared about doing something like this. It has been 100% the best decision we made. Erik's team is phenomenal. You always hear you bet the jockey, not the horse. And Erik and his team are phenomenal. And they've been able to help us in a lot of ways that even us, who I feel have a really good brand, coming in with Front Street was an amazing decision for us. In terms of what to hear about us, guys, I invite you to check it out. Go find out more about our franchising, what makes us unique. I think if you compare us to any other concept in the hair removal space, or just in the space of wanting a passive business that you can continue working your own job 9 to 5, but do this while it's building and kind of plan your own nest egg for when you want to exit your job. This is it. This is the one. It's got everything. We help you with the marketing. We help you with the reception. We're going to find locations that are going to be more profitable for you with the least amount of risk possible. You have a team of solid franchisor team that really cares and wants to help you succeed. And you can talk to any of our franchisees. They love the brand. I mean, we've got something really special and unique going on. So if you have a chance, please reach out. I will speak to you personally. I would love to learn more about you guys to see if you're interested. Franchise with Hello Sugar. That's the way to go.
I love it. I could be more excited about the relationship. All right, man, I'm going to let you go. We'll get you on again, and we'll get one of your two of your franchisees on as well, because I think it's always good to hear from franchisees. So I'll let you go, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.